Well, a couple days ago we saw Heretic. It's a new A24 picture, and you know what that means. It's a horror movie that's not really scary and is a touch pretentious. Connor, what is the plot of Heretic?
Heretic follows two Mormon missionaries who go to a strange man's house, and that strange man is like, let me rant at you about religion. Then they start getting a little creeped out by the guy, he's a little weird. And then they go into his dungeon basement where a nun type thing he calls a prophet, but it isn't really a prophet, and then the girls have to unmask the deception created by weird, edgy atheist men in an attempt to survive. So, Adam,
Yep.
what did you think of Heretic?
Heretic is really good. It's carried by its lead performances. The Mormon girls are very good. Obi, do you always have to do that? The Mormon girls are really good, but the big standout is Hugh Grant as Edgelord Man. Hugh Grant's a very charming man, and they twist his charms into making him very uncomfortable and uncanny, especially in the first half, which is mostly just people sitting around talking about religion in uncomfortable ways. And then eventually it has to become a real movie and gets a little less interesting, I think. There's definitely some interesting stuff going on, but especially at the end, you kind of have to find a way to wrap up your movie where people sit in a room and talk about religion. And so spooky stuff has to happen. And, but the cast is great. Small cast, nice little bottle film that only has 3 sets. The Mormon pair work really nicely off each other. They have good chemistry, and that makes them interesting as combatants against this charming, creepy, pushy man. There's lots of fun little twists and turns as you discover small things about the house and how it works and uncover its mysteries. I don't really want to spoil too much of it, honestly, because I think it's more fun to kind of let it unravel itself. It's extremely well made, well shot, the A24 standard. There's a couple really cool looking moments. There's a lot of good sound design stuff. The movie sounds fantastic, from using a few licensed tracks to just the creaks and groans of the old house and the prophet and all that. It's fun. It is. If you've seen the trailer, you probably have a pretty good idea of what it's about. At least the first half. It gets a little more normal movie-ish in the halfway point, but especially the first half I thought was really strong, and the back half definitely has some moments too. Connor, what'd you think of Heretic?
I thought Heretic was pretty good. It's a movie about people babbling about religions and similarities in religions and crises of faith and how can you believe what the unbelievable. The guy basically tries to recreate some religious stunts, I suppose, like having someone come back to life through a switch. There's a lot of just the politics of religion, I guess, that's discussed, and just sort of how the world works through interpretation and copying and mutation of ideas, and that's all kind of fascinating. And then the movie kind of gets slightly less good as it has to become a movie. Topher Grace randomly cameos, which I thought was sort of odd. Not even a super important or memorable role. He's just sort of in the movie for no reason.
He's basically a gag character.
Yeah, not even really a gag character. He's just a fucking, you could get anybody to play this role. He shows up to the house looking for the girls who are in the dungeon, the scary man's dungeon already. And the scary man's like, oh, I haven't seen him. And then Topher Grace is like, okay, have a blessed night. And then he is out of the movie.
Well, no, he comes back and says, I almost forgot to give you a Book of Mormon pamphlet.
Yeah. But you have two girls that lead the movie. Definitely Mormon girl and Anya Taylor Ortega, who has a face like A24 mutated her in a lab because Anya Taylor-Joy and Jenna Ortega were too busy to show up for the movie. And believe it or not, her character was somewhat skeptical crisis of fate lady that isn't as true a Mormon as one might think because she has a birth control rod and you kind of have Anya Taylor Ortega running around being like, I know this is all bullshit and you're feeding us a bunch of lies and shit. And then Mormon lady's like, I believe everything he's saying. But then she changes her mind towards the end of the movie for kind of plot convenience, and all of a sudden she becomes Sherlock Holmes from the movie Sherlock. I thought it was pretty good, but he definitely, like, I don't know. I thought all of the characters were somewhat tropey. There is old white guy that knows everything, and then there is vague Latino alien looking woman who's a skeptic, and then there's
Latino
innocent white girl, and they team up to form this movie. I mean, it looks good. It's a small set. It looks like it was made on the cheap, and not necessarily in a bad way. It was just a movie that probably didn't need to cost that much. And I feel like A24 saw some interesting stuff. I would say some of the writing feels a bit like Amazing Atheists versus Anya Taylor-Joy from The Menu. Because he's like sitting there just being edgy. He's like, what if God was like a fake, and like what good is God if he's blah blah blah. Like, I'm not a religious person, but it seems like kind of just like regurgitated like cheap religion arguments, and I think that was kind of the point. But at the end of the day, like, I don't really know what was more interesting, the philosophical one-sided religious sock puppet debates that the writer had with himself or herself, or the horror movie stuff. Like, I thought it was all really good, but like, it's definitely like, I suppose, a critique on religion, and at points it comes off pretty heavy-handed, to say the least. And it also felt like A24 did something they used to not do, where the marketing just fucking lied and would pretend something was like a horror movie or an action movie. Like Green Knight, they were like, this is like a fucking like medieval action movie. But in reality, it was not that at all, and it was like some weird shit.
It was some weird shit.
And like, there's a lot of that stuff. Like The Menu, they're like, this is the spookiest restaurant horror movie. But it wasn't really that.
They've always done that, though, because they also advertise They Come at Night as a horror movie. It's like...
Yeah, I know, but I feel like recently, since they've gotten more hype, I feel like A24 has kind of fallen into, like, because, like, half this movie feels like a Blumhouse movie, and half of it, like, a generic Blumhouse movie, and the other half of it feels like an A24 movie. But the thing is, when it all comes together, it just feels like a slightly pretentious A24 movie. Or a slightly pretentious Blumhouse movie. Like, at the end, it's like spooky religious man does spooky shit to these girls that are in his basement. I don't know. It's fairly derivative, and I feel like A24 like kind of falling into gimmick horror more than before. Like before, it was like, we're gonna make weird, pretentious horror movies. We're gonna try to win the first Oscar on a horror movie. But then they're like, well, that's not gonna work because we're still a small studio, but we can sell like T-shirts that just say like Ari Aster on it or something like that. Call it good. It's like the fucking 70s Star Wars technique for pretentious horror movies. Like, I always go on Facebook and it's like, get your A24 fucking reaction figure or puzzle or beanie cap. But then I feel like I'm supposed to go to, like, a brewery and talk about my experience watching the movie. And I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. I'm just kind of making the comment.
You
But-
really brutalized this movie.
In a couple months, you could probably buy the script book or something, and like fuzzy socks with Hugh Grant's face on it that says like "God's a sham" or whatever. The God's a Sham A24 official shop fuzzy socks merch drop at midnight. They have like a Supreme style drop system. Where like it drops at midnight and then you enter the lottery to enter the lottery to enter the lottery to have an opportunity to buy the Ari Aster puzzle. And it like comes together to be like an illustrated picture of Anya Taylor-Joy and Jenna Ortega or Florence Pugh or like Nicolas Cage in a fat suit. And it's not actually from a real movie. They just like took a picture of Nicolas Cage and edited him to be in a fat suit. That's what A24 is now,
Yeah,
and this movie feels more from the studio of we're gonna drop a movie. We're gonna drop. It feels more like merch drop A24 than like A24 of even a couple years ago. This feels like the IPA at a bar with friends. I mean, that's what it became because that was the audience. So, I suppose who am I to complain? But it was pretty good. So anyways, Aiden, would you recommend Heretic?
Yeah, I liked it. I like the first half a lot better. Hugh Grant is very charming. I like him as the most uncomfortable autistic man who wants to show you his weird hobby. And it gets a little less good towards the end when it becomes a real movie, but the first half especially I had a lot of fun with. It's very uncomfortable, weird. I liked it. Connor, would you recommend Heretic?
If you wash your body with Dr. Squatch, Harry Potter soap bars and have a perfectly greasy twirled mustache and wear a beanie cap that's rolled up to the point where it's not even really going to keep your head warm, then you'll really enjoy this movie like I did. So yes, I would recommend the movie if you check any of those boxes.
The Roast of A24.